Third Phase Moon, Blake Cousins, welcome back everybody from around the world. We have special guests today, Corey Goode, in regards to the DIA, which basically confirmed recently that exotic propulsion papers corroborating the inside testimony on warp drive and wormhole travel exist. Now we have Corey Goode, and I want to get his statements in regards to how he was able to obtain this top secret document. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Hello, Blake. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
There's been a photograph recently that has come in your possession in regards to a secret space program that existed over 70 years ago. This is the first time ever shared on YouTube. Can you tell us exactly what we're looking at?
So what we're looking at is a black and white photo that looks to be around the 1950s era, maybe late 40s, and it is reminiscent of the old NASA photos. Looks like a 200 millimeter lens was used, and it was taken with old school film. And you know, it's hard to figure out if this is genuine, what type of camera was used, what type of film, what type of exposure they would have used in outer space. In the original photo, when it was processed in a dark room, you know, the chemicals that were used, did they lighten parts of it up too much? We don't know, but this was actually sent to us by a viewer of our movie Above Majestic. We've had a lot of things sent to us, but this one popped in our email a few months ago, and we've been looking into it ever since.
What kind of investigative work has been done to prove that this photo is authentic?
I do get a lot of images, and a lot of them are weird lens flares or explainable things, but this one popped out. It's not so easy to dismiss when you first look at it. It looks staged, but then again, it looks reminiscent of old NASA photos when the photography was new in outer space. So it definitely stuck out to me when I checked that email. And I immediately sent it to Dr. Sala, who started doing image searches and other research. I sent it to David Wilcock and a few other people, and it's raised the eyebrows of everyone that has looked at it so far.
What kind of investigative work has been done to prove that this photo is authentic?
We have. Originally, when I sent it to Dr. Sala, he did Google image searches, did the normal type of due diligence, and didn't find anything. The image was pretty low resolution, so he requested that the person send us a scan of this photo. And they sent us a scan, but we think that it's a lower resolution scan. We're going to ask them for a professional high resolution scan of this image soon. Dr. Sala did the initial work, and then I started sharing it around with different people on my team. The first person I shared it with was Brandon Graham from EUX Media. He's working with us on a lot of different movie projects. And he was intrigued. He actually called and left me a voicemail discussing their findings that I'll play for you now.
Hey there, this is Renee, and I just thought I would do this video to show my examination of this photo that you showed me. So really what I wanted to create, it was a 3D model showing the planet here, the moon here, and the vessel here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 3D software that I'm working in. And so really what we're seeing here is the basic layout. And so I just wanted to show you from one view. This isn't the exact replica. This is actually more the view that I'm talking about. What is what here? And so what this represents is this is the camera view that took the image, that took the picture of the image. And so what we can begin to see is the reference here is the little cigar vessel here, and this is the basic relationship to the Earth. I can't say if this cigar vessel is to scale to the Earth, but you know, we can see it does have some workability. It's significantly small. and that might be a rather large vessel.
If this photograph turns out to be the real deal, what are the implications?
So, pretty interesting. They're a special effects company. Looking at an image like this, they would know how to go about faking it or, fudging it in certain ways. So their response was encouraging to me. Again, I don't know if this image is genuine or not. I'm leaving it up to everyone else to do the analysis and decide. When I showed it to the rest of my group, a lot of them are artists and do graphic work, and they started trying to tear it apart. There were some lighting issues that caught their attention, and that inspired Renee Armenta, who actually was our director of art on Above Majestic, to build a 3D model based on this image. And this is all assuming that this is Earth and our moon. We don't know that for sure if this is genuine, but he had some pretty interesting insights that popped up when he built this 3D model. I will go ahead and play that for you now.
Hey Corey, it's Renee. I thought it would just be easier for me to do a video on this image you gave me to show what I was doing with 3D, to kind of examine this a little bit differently. So we've got really three objects to work with. We've got our planet, we've got our moon, and we've got our ship. And the placement of those and the scale and the ratios really was a trick, and then deciding where the light's going to be. And so we look here, we can see that the light is definitely coming almost exactly right, and it looks like it's going to be slightly behind the objects. I can demonstrate that in the 3D software, but just by looking at that crescent, and then we'll go ahead and look at a render. But let's go ahead and look at 3D. So here I was using the image to composite things. So we've got our planet that is laid out there. We've got our moon, which is laid out there, and we've got our, we're just going to assume it's a cigar vessel. So I used the image to help me make sure that my 3D objects were realistically in place. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this at a little bit different angle here. So we're basically looking at the same composition of objects here with our planet, our moon, and cigar vessel. And so what's kind of cool about this is, I can't say that this cigar vessel is exactly to scale. It's about as small as I can get it to relationship with these other objects. But we can see that it's, pretty small. And that would be a decent placement for this. This is the camera that we are doing, that I am assuming that the picture took of this whole composition. And to make that all work, it was about a 200 millimeter lens was my discovery to make everything work. What we have here is a layout of the Earth and Moon, and I used ratios that we can all look up online, and created that for my placement. And the lighting, as it turns out, I'll just go ahead, looks like it's about 15, 14, yeah. This is all my guesstimations here. This is just what creates workability, right? So the lighting was about there, and we're going to go ahead and look at the ship. The ship had to be rotated probably about a minimum about 40 degrees. I wanted to see if there was any going to be any perspective issues when we did the light. And why don't we just go ahead and take a look at the render and see for ourselves. The composition worked out right, so that's the original image. And then there's the render. Now, 3D isn't a perfect science. It's not going to be 100% realistic, but it is pretty unforgiving in certain things as far as where certain shadows will hit. It does not respond the same way as film does. So it's obvious it's using a longer exposure here. So we have to remember that this is a 3D render and not film photography. I used to do some work in a dark room, so I know something about that process. But under these conditions, I would never really know exactly how all of these objects would behave. My photographical examination of this would be that the stars are very bright and they're very illuminated. In fact, they're so brilliant. I mean, the size of the magnitude of the brightness creates this size when we all know that stars are like pinpoints. So that's giving off a lot of light. But again, I've never taken space photography, especially not in the 1950s, so I can't really say how the film should behave. But when we look at the 3D render, we do see a very clear termination shadow when we match that moon. I did want to, since we're dealing with this 3D render, and when we look up close on the 3D render, it's very pixelated because we're dealing with digital rendering. And so I wanted to somehow replicate the aging of this to make it also be a little bit more analog. So I created this version out of my 3D render. And so basically all I did, I only used a couple of filters. I didn't do a lot of retouching. I basically wanted to soften these hard pixels, and so it was a couple of little blurring, and then I have a film grain. It's literally just a plugin called Film Grain, and it gives you a film grain version, and then I grayscaled it with and so what we're getting here is actually something that is looking a lot closer than just the 3D render. So when we compare my treated version to make it look more photographic and softer, we're actually getting somewhere in the ballpark. So I would say that there is, there's some workability in this that I think that is just beautiful. Still, even though this is brighter, now that I've done some of the treatment, we still see a clear termination shadow where we really don't in that first one. The stars are quite brilliant. I'm not quite sure how to resolve that. But I just wanted to do this to show you that in 3D this does work, the composition. We have some issues with the lighting and perhaps the magnitude brightness of the stars as captured in the film. And but other than that, I really enjoyed working on this. So I hope this helps out, and I'll talk to you later.
So as you can see, it could be Earth, or it could be another planet, if genuine, but the 3D modeling that Renee did really kind of put a lot of things in perspective, and also sort of let us know that this was around a 200mm lens being used on the camera. When it comes to trying to extrapolate what type of film, exposure time, and all the other processes, that's not anything we're ever going to be able to find out.
That's why we call it a family-owned business. And since I was a little kid, he's had me there. I remember I couldn't even pick up the 2-gallon Cokes yet.
But this 3D model did help us extrapolate quite a bit, in my opinion.
Is the cigar-shaped ship in the photograph a craft that looks familiar to you?
Yes, actually. In some of the old images I saw, the stars looked kind of overexposed, similar to this image. But what I'm really curious is, not only when people start to investigate this, and you can download the actual image from my Facebook site at Sphere Being Alliance, but not only do I want people to start looking at all the lighting and other aspects of the image, it would be also great to look at these star patterns and see if they match anything really in the sky. And if so, we could prove that this may or may not be Earth. And if this is a hoax, for them to take the extra step to add stars that actually match star patterns would, be pretty far-fetched, but some people have a lot of time on their hands. So I'm looking forward to what the community finds out on their own, and hopefully we'll have a higher resolution picture soon to share.
Have you been on a craft like this?
Image-wise, absolutely. When I was in the programs, we often had access to what we called the smart glass pads, which connected to a database. And when we would go through the smart glass pad, old images from the 50s and 60s, in the 60s is when they really started to develop photography in outer space. Before that, a lot of the images looked very similar to this. A lot of focus issues, the stars overexposing in the background, it was very reminiscent of what I would see in the historical data on the smart glass pads. This could either be a large craft, or this could be some sort of a space platform or station. We just can't really tell. As far as have I been on these long cylindrical spaceships that the Navy has, the answer is yes. And some of them do get quite long. This one looks like it would be a kilometer long. It's really hard. We don't have any perspective. But some of them are quite large. And we have a number of them out there that are traveling into deep space. And I have seen them and I have been on them. Well, the implications are huge. If we've had a space program for over 50 years, we've been traveling to other stars, that means we've conquered quite a few things dealing with physics. And it also means that we could probably solve a lot of problems on Earth that are not being solved. And what's going on? Why aren't they solving the problems if they have these technologies? That's why a lot of people don't want to believe these technologies exist. If they existed, the world would be utopia, right? So not only are the implications huge that we have technologies that can take us to other planets and can make this a utopia, but what does it mean in the form of reaching out to our cosmic cousins, starting to meet people from other worlds and beginning commerce with them? Is that you would think that would be the next step.
Recently, you've had a breakthrough in regards to the FOA and the newly disclosed documents that show that our government had a secret program developing exotic aircraft involving warp drive and other extraordinary tech. Can you tell us exactly how you obtained the info and what can we take away from this?
I can tell you that it was through an alliance contact, and this was a person who I would say printed this out themselves. It did not pass through any other hands before I received it, but that's about as specific as I can get, because I would like to receive more.
What's recently happened is that the Defense Intelligence Agency responded to a Freedom of Information Act request that was put in by the Federation of American Scientists, asking for confirmation about a list of 38 Defense Intelligence reference documents that was leaked and that the US Congress allegedly had wanted information about this. So the Defense Intelligence Agency was confirming that this list actually was real, that these studies had been commissioned by the Defense Intelligence Agency going as far back as 2007, which is when the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program was launched. And so that basically began a process by which different organizations began to put together feasibility studies on exotic technologies like warp drive, like traversable wormholes, using dark matter, and things like telepathy and quantum teleportation. So these were advanced exotic propulsion systems that were being studied by these different organizations.
So now that the DIA admits the program existed, how does this corroborate everything that you've been talking about these many years?
Well, what the Defense Intelligence Agency confirmation that this list actually was genuine, that it covered these advanced propulsion technologies that had been secretly studied going all the way back to 2007. What it did was that it confirmed that this was actually real scientific investigation into these exotic propulsion systems, and it was a feasibility study that showed that they were possible. Now, this was important because there have been a number of whistleblowers and insiders, such as Corey Goode, who say that they were part of secret space programs that were actually utilizing some of these propulsion technologies, such as warp drive, such as traversable wormholes, being able to tap into the quantum flux. So, tapping into 0-point energy. So this was confirmation for some of these claims that Corey Goode and others had been making, that such technologies were feasible and secret space programs could use these technologies. Now, what made this DIA confirmation especially relevant was that Corey Goode was actually the first person to actually leak the existence of these papers. Back in December of 2017, he leaked 2 of these papers, one dealing with traversable wormholes and the other one dealing with warp drive technologies. No one had ever heard of these papers before. He had gotten these papers from an insider, presumably someone working within the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he leaked this to the public. And then later on, the public started to learn about the existence of this advanced aerospace technology identification program, that this was actually in existence. And so that they actually were doing these kinds of feasibility studies to try and understand the behaviors of some of the UFOs. So this was something Corey Goode leaked, and it's confirmation that Corey Goode has access to a genuine insider with this kind of information. So I think the DIA confirming this list of 38 papers dealing with these exotic technology propulsion systems was actually a very big boost to the authenticity of Corey Goode as an insider who has legitimate information on secret space programs.
What kind of technology are in these exotic craft? What did they mean when they speak of wormhole tech? Is there ET involvement?
I think so. I think that they're trickling out information to prepare the public for the release of some of these advanced technologies. Not all of them. They'll show us, anti-gravity type things at first and explain it all. It all makes total sense. It's a shame that we just discovered it. We could have discovered it in the time of Tesla, but they really did. And they'll try to make it sound like this is a new program, when actually they're using Space Force to aggregate all of these other programs under one moniker, and give a healthy platform for them to be able to let this information out. If they're going to disclose this information, some people are going to have some hard questions, and they're going to have to do it in a patriotic sort of way, I believe, from not only my opinion, but from the many connections I've made. And this isn't only my opinion, this is the opinion of many of the Alliance people that I have conversations with on a regular basis.
So far, 3 of the papers on the 38 documents list have been leaked to the public. When do you think we'll actually see the other 35 papers?
Dr. Sala and a few others are working to do freedom of information requests to get the other documents released. I'm told one of them will not be released because it does contain classified information about high-powered laser systems. But the others, we believe that we will be able to have released through FOIA requests. Now, I'm also working the back channels. Originally, before I was given these 2 studies, I was given actual manuals that were mind-blowing. They talked about wormholes, stargates, and the same types of technology, but they were talking about it from an electroplasmic physics universe, not this classical physics that are in these studies that I did release. I was asked to not release these others, to hold on to them to the proper time, and one of them was stolen from me. I've told the story before. I took them to be authenticated, and it was at an old pawn shop, and a person ended up pulling a pistol on me and telling me that I wasn't going to leave with the document, and they took it. And then later on, the other two that I was given were taken out of my home. So it was probably less than 2 months after that happened that this contact gave me these. And I think when they handed it to me, they expected a better, or I guess, more of a reaction. I looked at them and I just kind of snickered, because they were very similar to the books I'd received before, but they were a lot less detailed and had more of the classical physics type of terminology and equations in it. But it was great to have that to be able to release after going through what I did before. But I really wish I had those other manuals to release. And I was told that they may have some more, they may slide my way in the future. I'm told that I might receive documents in the future that I can release. In the meantime, a lot of this is in the way of briefings, a lot of the information that is going back and forth, and I can actually say publicly for the first time that over the last year and a half, I've slowly been introducing people like David Wilcock, Dr. Sala, and Jordan Sather to various alliance contacts. And some of these are generals, some of these are colonels and politicians in this country and in other countries. And I think a lot of people are wondering, how could David Wilcock and Dr. Sala believe a lot of this unconfirmed information that I'm bringing forth? And I think it's because of the people that I'm introducing them to, the cooperation that they're seeing behind the scenes, and the fact that all of the information I've given them has been confirmed through other sources of theirs, and by it matched information that they've kept secret from the public.
Well, with the Defense Intelligence Agency confirming that this list of 38 papers is genuine, and so far we know 3 of them have been leaked. 2 by Corey Goode back in December of 2017, and then 1 by George Knapp, who released that one in the middle of 2018. Now, we know 3 of the papers that deal with exotic propulsion systems, and we know that those 3 papers all involved authors associated with EarthTech International, which is an organization that's...
People all over the planet are waking up.
Studies these kinds of exotic propulsion systems and other kinds of advanced technologies out of Austin, Texas. And it was established by Dr. Hal Puthoff back in 1985. And what's interesting here is that Hal Puthoff not only has had a long association with advanced concepts like remote viewing, but also his name has come up in association with Mars and in establishing a colony on Mars. So EarthTech International was involved in this, and we know from someone who claims to have been a target of a recruitment effort, that is Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She says that she was actually targeted for recruitment, and that the organization that was really spearheading all of this was EarthTech International, being headed by Hal Puthoff. So it's interesting that the three papers that have been released, all 3 have as their authors scientists associated with EarthTech International. So it'll be very interesting to find out when the other 35 papers are leaked or released through future Freedom of Information Acts, which presumably is going to come about now through the Federation of American Scientists, that more of these papers will be released, and we'll find out what organizations were involved in those.
They have electrogravitic technologies that allow them to, of course, defy gravity, but they started to develop temporal drives later on that allowed them to jump around in time just as easily as they jump around in space. And that is difficult for a lot of people because we're starting to wrap our minds around the vastness of space and the fact that you can bend space around large objects, and gravitational fields can bend space, but they don't understand that time can also be bent and stretched and compressed with these same technologies. When you're traveling through space, you're traveling through time, and the faster you travel through space, the faster you go through time. And so they've developed a lot of technologies that people on this planet, if it was all disclosed at once, they would think it was sorcery. It is so hard for the mind to wrap around concepts that in the mainstream world we haven't even imagined yet, even in sci-fi. These things are real, and they've been going on for quite some time. Cosmic web. And the concept is every galaxy, every star, every planet, every planetoid has an electromagnetic connection between them. And if you look at images of the cosmic web, you will see how everything is connected by these long filaments. Well, through these filaments are how these stargates work, how they travel from star to star. And we've developed the technology to be able to open and maintain these different types of wormholes. And it's a technology that is used in certain craft that travel through the cosmic web, as well as physical locations on the planet that, as the Earth rotates, they're like nodes that become active, and those regions can be used as a takeoff point into the cosmic web through these stargates. There's absolutely ET involvement, but this isn't just a story of ETs coming to us and handing us this knowledge. This is also us rediscovering our past, and we had all of this knowledge before. Human beings traveled among the stars in the past. They went to great meetings with other ET groups, and there was commerce, all types of things. Like all of this type of thing was happening before the last ice age. So a lot of the mystery schools and places in Tibet and India, these old monasteries, had this information. And going back to World War II, we had Nazis and other people that were going on pilgrimages and expeditions to gather this information. And when they did, they were finding old scrolls, and you'd unroll this old scroll and look at it, and they were the schematics for building a flying saucer or a Vimana, and other technologies. So we are rediscovering the past, we are getting information from extraterrestrials, and we are innovating in the moment. And some very interesting things have been developed that I'm very hopeful will be disclosed to everybody very soon. Well, as I said, I've been talking about the cosmic web. I've been talking about how these spacecraft, how their engines work, how stargates work within the cosmic web. So they definitely corroborate my testimony. But like we said, it also sets up quite a lot for future disclosures.
What's your thoughts on Bigelow and Elon Musk? Are they part of the secret space program?
I think that these are two human beings that want to make a huge difference on this planet through innovation, and developing out technologies. I think they see a lot of the barriers, but they don't understand that these barriers are something that they're not going to be able to break. They're not going to be able to travel freely in space until a lot changes, or until they sign agreements, confidentiality agreements, to where when they do go out into space, they won't report what they're seeing. I know Bigelow and Elon Musk, they both have good hearts, and I think that they're trying to disclose technologies to all of us and help innovate those to make this the utopia that it should be.
Well, the role of Robert Bigelow in the setting up of the feasibility studies going back to 2007, after they were funded by the US Congress, in particular Senator Harry Reid, who was the Senate Majority Leader, he was the one that provided $22 million in funding for these advanced technology studies to be put underway, and for other aspects of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
The very fabric of life has a way of preparing us for wisdom and growth.
To be put into operation. So Harry Reid provided the funding, and he sent it to Robert Bigelow, who was basically in charge of the Bigelow space program that was being set up in Nevada to really look at developing a civilian space program. So this was something that was funded through Congress, through Robert Bigelow, and Bigelow knows a lot about some of these exotic propulsion systems that were being secretly studied in terms of their feasibility. So I think Bigelow probably knows a lot more about the secret space program. As for Elon Musk, I think he is someone that has been kind of given support for pushing conventional rocket technologies as far as possible in order to build up a much more affordable space program where civilian industries could actually go out into space. So taking it out of the hands of government and military and putting space exploration into the hands of the corporations, because I think that's going to be where the next generation of a lot of research is going to go. Unfortunately, it's going to be corporations that are going to lead the way on secret space programs, and Musk, I think, is a big part of this.
And to be clear, I don't know either one of them, but no, they are not involved in the secret space programs. They're involved in a more of a mainstream corporate drive to get us into space and to develop technologies that will make this a better world. I think that they're probably amused by stories of the secret space program, but I don't know what kind of connections they have. They could have very similar connections to me, and they could be hearing a lot of very similar things that I'm reporting, but it's just too controversial. And they're in mainstream business, and maybe they need to maintain a healthy skepticism until they see the nuts and bolts.
What's next for you, Corey, after the huge response to Above Majestic?
Yes. Not only that, as we're outlining the information out, it looks like we've got at least 5 sequels. So yeah, lots more to come. We're developing a couple of sequels right now to Above Majestic, and we hope to be in production very soon. We've been working on doing a Hollywood movie since, I believe, the end of 2016, so this shouldn't be any shock to people. But we have been making a lot of really positive steps, is all I can really say, towards beginning production of the movie. It would be a huge blockbuster movie with lots of special effects, of course. And I see this as a way of not only getting this information out to the mainstream. You know, the cabal groups have used Hollywood to disseminate bad information into our consciousness. If we can sneak some disclosure into some sci-fi, it could be pretty interesting. I might be able to get in real depictions of real spacecraft in this movie. So the Alliance is excited about the possibilities. We're excited, and I will definitely come back and talk to you when I know more about that, because it's going to be very exciting.
Thanks for joining us right here at Third Phase of Moon. Thank you, Corey, for joining us.
Well, Blake, I appreciate you inviting me back. I hope to see you in April. April 8th through 13th, I'm going to be in Kona, and if anyone wants to know the details, go to joanocean.com. We're going to swim with the dolphins and have a conference there. The public doesn't really know, but because of the movie, possible movie, and in this slate of documentaries, I'm going to be seen publicly quite a bit less. Might be doing one major event myself a year, but I'm not really going to have the time to do all of the other events. So this would be a really good time for people to come and spend time with me and Dr. Sala and a few others from Above Majestic. and because it could be a while, and before I'm able to do another venue.
Everybody out there, be safe. Keep your eyes on the skies, and if you see anything amazing, submit it to us right here at Third Phase Moon, Blake Cousins. We'll see you again next time.
I looked and examined other space photography, and in order to get the stars with that size even, it would take a very long exposure, and I think with that long exposure we would see zero texture on this planet. We would see zero texture on that ship. We don't really see texture here, but it's at a gray level. It's almost like this star is brighter than the moon, and that doesn't really make sense to me if this is our sun. You know, perhaps this is another system with a very dim star, and that would make these stars brighter. I don't know, but I'm going with it that this is potentially the Earth, and I can't really resolve that. If you wanted to see the steps that I went through to make that black and white version, so you can see that I didn't do a lot of retouching. I mean, I did do, obviously. I did this thing that's called a surface blur, which basically begins to just smooth out some of a lot of the noise, because right now we're dealing with a lot of digital noise here, and we can to remove a lot of this digital render detail. And then I really only take really a couple more steps here. I'm going to go ahead and do a film grain filter, and that's with it off. And this is the close-up sample with it on, and I liked what it was doing.
I have seen live extraterrestrials face to face.
The shape of it was what kind of gave it away as the possible
doing. It actually makes it look more like a photograph with that, so I just hit accept on that, and then there is a black and white adjustment here, and I just do the audio because I'm wanting to move a little faster here. I hit OK, and that's basically what we're getting.